It's a dark piece of history that many in the small town of Crystal City are hoping to shine a light on. The ranching and farming community was once home to a Japanese internment camp during World War II. Just recently, the town got their first museum with an exhibit dedicated to those held for years in that camp. And 2 survivors were there for the museum's grand opening. They spoke to KENS 5's Audrey Castoreno about their memories and what it means for the museum to now carry their story.
In the small South Texas town of Crystal City, whose claim to fame is being the spinach capital of the world. Now, down the main drive sits the town's first museum, the My Story Museum, which tells the deeper, sometimes darker history of this railroad town.
Just the idea of the things that people have gone through is unthinkable.
Stories that have sometimes been forgotten. History now tacked up on walls for all to see.
It's a refreshing idea that, Crystal City is being exposed with this history that has been lost for such a long time.
Pictures that tell the story of the last American internment camp of World War II.
These people were basically incarcerated. It was sort of like a city within a city.
The sun shines practically every day in the year.
A propaganda film showcased the camp where Japanese, Germans, and Italians were held.
This is actually a school that I went to when I was in elementary.
Wow.
Well, after the camp closed, they turned it into an elementary school. So,
for some like Ruben Salazar, the buildings of the one-time internment camp are remembered as a repurposed school. But for Kahaz Naganuma and Hiroshi Shimizu, it's much different.
My memory of this is that when the Germans left, they abandoned the schools. The only thing that was left was chalk on the chalkboard. But we were so depraved that we thought it was wonderful.
Hiroshi, who was born in another American internment camp, was 3 when he arrived in Crystal City. Kaz's family was taken from Peru by the FBI, sent by boat, and then trained to the internment camp.
We stayed, for 3.5 years. So I was 5 years old when we were released,
Does it make you emotional to talk about this and to relive it?
Only when I think about my parents again, I really, even to this day, don't understand how they made it through. It's pretty hard to take.
Oh, and one of the horrors of the Peruvians, so when they landed in New Orleans, they were all stripped and showered, hosed down with DDT.
Yeah, that's what everyone says, that this camp was better. But better, you're still in prison.
Yeah.
It's gotta be right there.
Kurt Akita is a descendant of the Crystal City internment camp. His grandfather Ted was just 8 when he arrived, a time his grandfather never talked about.
He just kind of brought it up one day as he himself, when he was diagnosed with cancer, had to wrestle with his own mortality. And that really started my own personal journey in learning about a part of this story.
Today, on his second trip to Crystal City, he searches for remnants of T-51, the place behind barbed wire that is now late grandfather once called home.
I bet he walked by that cactus. As he was passing away, that was the last request he made of me, is I can't take that train to Texas, but I want you to take it for me. I came out here in 2016 and didn't have a guide. I didn't know where I was going. And talking to our survivors, Kaz and Hiroshi, it feels like talking to my grandfather, hearing the stories that it's not his stories, but it's close enough. And to be back here today with these people, it makes me feel like I could make Grandpa very proud to be here.
Akita, now a father himself, reflecting on the little joys his grandfather and others tried to find in confinement.
In our community, we have a phrase, "Kodomo no tameni," which means for the sake of the children, and to be thinking about what it would mean to raise a child here. Both the joys he tried to preserve, but also the safety he tried to create in a place that's behind barbed wire.
We gather here today to right a grave wrong.
In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which included a formal apology from the United States for the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
When you go through this experience, an apology doesn't take that away, unfortunately, yeah.
Does it bring you any pain or anger?
It does, but it's tempered by the knowledge that America is like this. I'd like to change it, and that's why we want to bring a spotlight. But I understand systemically America is a racist country, and that's what causes, I think, all of that kind of anti-immigrant feeling, which is prevalent, from history to today, and it's being exploited by politicians for their own gain. And so, it's alive, and that's the big thing that we want to fight.
For my grandfather, I think that shame never went away.
I don't know if apologies is going to do the work, but the museum is going to help us carry the story, and that's why we're involved.
Keeping the memory alive so history doesn't repeat itself.
And I'm so thankful to know that this place is here and protected and cared for.
Audrey Casoreno, KENS 5.
The museum and exhibits were created largely in part by the Crystal City Pilgrimage Committee and the owner of the museum and former city manager, Diana Palacios. If you'd like to learn more about the internment camps or the history of Crystal City, be sure to visit My Story Museum. Roxy?